The piercing wail of the security alarm shattered the early morning calm at Silver Creek Wildlife Clinic. Emma Harrison jolted upright, her heart pounding as she rushed toward the front entrance. In her 15 years as a wildlife nurse, she had handled every kind of emergency. Injured deer caught in fences, eagles with broken wings, fox kits abandoned by their mothers. But never had the clinic's alarm been triggered quite like this. The crisp autumn air still carried the scent of pine and damp earth, and the golden light of dawn barely stretched through the dense tree line. Emma's boots thudded against the tiled floor as she reached for the monitor displaying the live feed from the security cameras. What she saw stopped her cold. A fully grown female grizzly bear stood at the clinic's entrance, her massive frame silhouetted against the morning sun. For a moment, Emma's instincts screamed danger. Grizzlies didn't linger near human structures, they avoided them. And yet, here this one was, pacing back and forth, pausing every few moments to look directly into the camera. Emma narrowed her eyes, her breath catching in her throat. Something was wrong. The bear wasn't acting aggressive. There was no display of dominance, no huffing, no charging. Instead, there was a strange deliberation in her movements, an unsettling sense of purpose. Reaching for her radio with trembling fingers, she called Dr. Michael Bennett, her colleague and lead veterinarian, who was still 20 minutes away. "Michael, we have a situation, a grizzly, but she's not attacking, she's—" Emma hesitated, watching as the bear took another slow step toward the clinic doors, her breath visible in the crisp air. "She's waiting." A shiver ran down Emma's spine. She didn't know why, but deep in her gut, she sensed something extraordinary was about to unfold. And it would change everything she thought she knew about the wild. Emma's pulse pounded in her ears as she stood frozen, staring at the screen. The grizzly bear, massive, powerful, and undeniably wild, did not move like an animal lost or confused. She wasn't scavenging for food or sniffing at the air for danger. Instead, she continued to pace with an unsettling patience, stopping every few moments to glance directly into the security camera. Her dark eyes filled with something Emma couldn't quite define. Fear? No. Anger? Not that either. It was something else entirely, something closer to desperation. Emma swallowed hard and forced herself to move. She needed a better look. Grabbing her coat, she stepped toward the clinic's front window, keeping a cautious distance. Through the glass, she could see the bear more clearly now. The early morning light glowed against her thick, dusty brown fur, highlighting the mud-caked patches along her legs and sides. She looked exhausted, her breaths coming in slow, deliberate huffs, as if she had been traveling for miles. That's when Emma noticed something else, the way the bear held herself. Most wild animals, especially predators, had a certain stance when near human structures, a mix of wariness and dominance, ready to retreat or defend themselves at a moment's notice. But this bear, she was deliberately holding back. Her muscles were tense, but she wasn't on edge. She was waiting. The realization sent another shiver down Emma's spine. Waiting for what? She reached for her radio again. "Michael, where are you?" A burst of static crackled before his voice came through. "Just turned onto the access road, 5 more minutes." "Good," she exhaled, keeping her eyes locked on the bear. "Something's really off here. She's not trying to break in or leave, she's staying. She keeps looking at the door like she wants something from us." There was a pause on the other end before Michael responded, his voice cautious. "Best, not normal." Emma didn't need him to tell her that. She had spent years treating injured wildlife, working closely with everything from owls to mountain lions, and in all that time, she had never seen an animal behave like this. The bear suddenly stopped pacing and turned her head toward the tree line. Emma's breath caught. For a moment, she thought the bear was about to leave, but instead she lowered her head and let out a deep, guttural sound, half growl, half whimper. It wasn't a warning. It wasn't aggression. It was a call. Something inside Emma told her that whatever was about to happen next would explain everything. She pressed her palm against the cold glass, hardly daring to breathe. And then, out of the shadows of the forest, something small and fragile emerged. A tiny cub, struggling to walk, its right side dragging against the earth, its fur darkened with blood. Emma's heart clenched. The mother bear had come here for a reason. And now she knew why. Emma's breath hitched as she watched the tiny cub stumble forward, its small body trembling with each agonizing step. Its right side dragged against the earth, its fur clumped with dried blood and mud. The moment it emerged from the tree line, it nearly collapsed, its legs barely able to hold its weight. But it wasn't the cub's injuries alone that sent a chill down Emma's spine. It was the way the mother bear moved with it. The massive grizzly turned back toward the clinic entrance, her movements slower now, more careful, as though every step was meant to guide her baby forward. She didn't nudge it roughly, didn't force it to move faster than it could. Instead, she waited, pausing when the cub needed to stop, gently urging it on when it hesitated. Emma had seen mother animals care for their young before. She had seen deer nuzzle their fawns awake after a fall, birds shielding their fledglings from the wind. But this was different. This was deliberate. This was a mother guiding her child to safety, leading it toward help. Emma swallowed hard, blinking against the sting of emotion that rose in her chest. Wild animals didn't do this. Not unless they had no other choice. The security camera feed captured every painful movement, every shuddering breath of the cub. Emma could see its tiny ribs rise and fall in erratic bursts, its breathing labored. The wound on its side was deep but not fresh. This little one had been suffering for a while. How long had the mother been carrying this burden alone? Emma clenched her fists, her medical instincts kicking in. She had to act fast. Reaching for the radio, she pressed the button with steady fingers. "Michael, it's a cube. It's hurt, badly." The mother brought it here. There was silence on the other end for a brief moment before Michael spoke, his voice filled with something Emma rarely heard from him. Disbelief. "She brought it to us?" "Yes." Emma's voice came out in a whisper. She could barely believe it herself. This wasn't just an injured animal being found by humans. This was a wild mother bringing her wounded baby to the one place she must have seen other animals receive care. The realization nearly stole Emma's breath away. The mother bear paused at the clinic entrance, her massive head lowering slightly as she kept her watchful eyes on her cub. Then, in a movement so intentional it made Emma's throat tighten, she backed away, creating space between herself and the cub. She wasn't leaving. She was waiting. Emma had never seen anything like this in her life. The message was clearer than words. "Help my child." Her fingers trembled slightly as she grabbed her medical bag, her heart pounding in her chest. This wasn't just another case. This was something else entirely. This was a plea for help that defied everything she thought she knew about the wild. Emma had treated countless wild animals before. Injured eagles, foxes caught in traps, fawns left orphaned. But never had she stood face to face with a grizzly mother willingly placing her child in human hands. Her pulse hammered as she stepped outside, her boots crunching against the gravel of the clinic's entrance. The cool morning air pressed against her skin, sharp and fresh, but all of her focus was locked onto the scene in front of her. The mother bear stood just 20 feet away, her massive frame unmoving, eyes locked onto Emma with unwavering intensity. Emma had encountered grizzlies before, always at a distance, always with the understanding that any misstep could be fatal. But this wasn't an ordinary encounter. The mother had backed away just enough, positioning herself as an observer rather than a threat. Her meaning was clear. "I won't stop you, but don't hurt my baby." Emma took a slow breath, steadying herself. Every instinct told her this moment was delicate, fragile, something on the edge of breaking if she moved too quickly. The cub, whom she had already named Aspen in her mind, lay on the ground just a few feet in front of her, its tiny body trembling with exhaustion. Emma could see its small chest rising and falling erratically, the pain visible in every shudder. It needed help now. Carefully she crouched down, keeping her movements slow, measured, non-threatening. Her years of experience told her that even a single sign of hesitation or fear could set off the wrong reaction. She whispered softly, her voice barely more than a breath. "You're okay, little one. We're going to help you." The cub flinched slightly as she reached out, but what happened next nearly stole the breath from Emma's lungs. The mother bear didn't move. She didn't charge. She didn't growl. She didn't even take a single step forward. Instead, she watched. Not with fear, not with aggression, but with understanding. Emma's hands trembled as she gently touched Aspen's fur, her fingers barely skimming the small body. Up close, she could see the full extent of the injury, the deep wound from the snare, the bruising along its ribs from struggling against the metal wire. Her throat tightened. This little cub had been suffering for days. And through all of it, his mother had fought to keep him alive, to find help. Emma swallowed hard, overwhelmed by the weight of it all. She turned her head slightly, her gaze meeting the mother bear's once more. For a moment there was only silence. A connection passed between them, one that transcended species, defied logic. Emma wasn't just treating an injured cub. She had been chosen. The mother had put aside every natural instinct, every fear of humans, because she knew, somehow, some way, that this was her baby's only hope. Tears burned at the corners of Emma's eyes, but she blinked them back, forcing herself to focus. "You're safe now, Aspen." She gathered the cub into her arms, feeling its frail weight against her. And still, the mother bear remained still, watching, waiting. She trusted them. And that trust was something Emma would never forget. Emma carried Aspen inside the clinic, cradling the fragile cub as if he were made of glass. His tiny body was lighter than she expected, too light for a bear his age. Malnourishment, dehydration, blood loss. He had been suffering for days. Dr. Michael Bennett was already waiting inside, his medical kit open on the table. His usual confident demeanor was replaced by something quieter, more careful, as he took in the sight of the injured cub. Emma gently laid Aspen down on the examination table. The little bear whimpered, his breath shuddering. Michael leaned in, carefully examining the cub's wounds. "The snare cut deep," he muttered, reaching for a pair of surgical scissors. "We need to remove the wire before we do anything else." Emma nodded, her hands steady as she helped hold Aspen still. She had seen traps like these before, illegal, brutal, designed to maim and kill, but something felt different this time. As Michael began cutting away the metal, Emma leaned closer, inspecting the wire. Her fingers traced along its edges. And that's when she saw it. Deep grooves in the metal, jagged and uneven. Her heart stopped. These weren't marks from Aspen's struggles. These were bite marks, claw marks. Emma's eyes darted to Michael. "Look at this!" She turned the snare toward him, pointing at the damaged edges. Michael frowned. Then realization dawned in his face. He understood. The mother bear had tried to break the snare herself. The evidence was right there. The deep indentations, the twisted, shredded sections of metal. She had used her own teeth, her own claws, to try and free her baby. And she had almost succeeded. Emma's throat tightened. She could picture it now. Luna out in the wilderness, finding her cub caught in this cruel trap. She must have tried again and again, pulling, biting, clawing at the metal, determined to free her child. But she couldn't do it alone. So she did something no one would have ever believed possible. She brought her baby here. A lump formed in Emma's throat as the full weight of it hit her. This wasn't just about an injured cub. This was about a mother who refused to give up. Michael exhaled sharply. She knew Emma. She knew we could help. Emma swallowed, her vision blurring with unshed tears. For all the times humans had hurt animals, for all the pain inflicted on wildlife by poachers and traps, This mother bear had still chosen to trust them. She blinked rapidly, forcing herself to focus. There was no time to be overwhelmed. Aspen was still in pain, still depending on them. "Let's get him cleaned up," she said, her voice hoarse but firm. As she reached for the antiseptic, she glanced outside through the clinic window. Luna was still there, still waiting, watching, hoping. And for the first time in her career, Emma realized this wasn't just about saving a wild animal. It was about proving that they were worthy of the trust this mother bear had given them. Emma worked with the precision of experience, but her heart felt heavier with every touch. This wasn't just another injured animal. This was a cub whose mother had fought against impossible odds, had risked everything, and had broken every instinct of self-preservation, all to bring him here. Aspen whimpered softly as Michael gently cleaned the wound, his small body twitching in pain. Emma whispered to him, her voice soft, reassuring. "You're okay, little one. You're safe now." Outside the clinic, Luna stood perfectly still, her massive form motionless against the backdrop of the trees. She hadn't moved since they brought Aspen inside. Her dark eyes stayed fixed on the clinic door, unwavering, patient, but also filled with something Emma had never seen in a wild animal before. Trust. Michael finished disinfecting the wound and examined the damage. "The snare cut deeper than I thought, but it missed the bone. We can save the leg." Emma let out a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. "Then let's do it." Michael nodded and reached for a syringe. "Pain meds first." Emma carefully adjusted Aspen's position, keeping her hands steady even as her emotions swirled beneath the surface. As she applied pressure to the cub's wound to slow the bleeding, she noticed something unusual. The edges of the injury were clean in some places. She leaned in closer. It wasn't just the snare that had left marks. There were other signs, as if something had been tending to the wound. Her breath caught as she made the connection. Luna had been cleaning Aspen's injuries. Not with water, not with soil, with her own tongue. Emma had seen this behavior in domestic animals before, mother dogs licking their puppies, cats tending to their young, but to witness it in a grizzly bear? She swallowed hard. This mother had been fighting for days to keep her baby alive. Michael noticed her hesitation. "What is it?" Emma ran a gentle hand along the cub's fur, feeling the areas that had been cared for. Luna was already treating him. She wasn't just trying to free him from the snare, she was tending to the wounds afterward. She did everything she could to keep him alive before bringing him here. Michael exhaled slowly, his expression shifting from clinical focus to something closer to reverence. Emma glanced at the window again, locking eyes with Luna. Did she know? Did she understand what was happening in here? Because something in that gaze told Emma that Luna was waiting for a sign that her decision to trust the humans had been the right one. Emma turned back to Aspen, determination hardening in her chest. They wouldn't let her down. She worked quickly, bandaging the wound after Michael stitched it. The moment they wrapped the final layer, Aspen let out a long, shuddering sigh, his small body finally relaxing as the pain medication took effect. "He's stable," Michael confirmed. "We did it." But as Emma looked back at the window, she realized they weren't done yet. Luna was still there, still waiting. And soon it would be time for the moment Emma wasn't sure she was ready for. The reunion. Emma stood at the clinic doorway, cradling the now stable cub in her arms. Aspen's tiny body was still weak, but his breathing had steadied, his pain numbed by the medication. He would recover. But the most important moment was still ahead. Outside, Luna had not moved. The massive grizzly remained exactly where she had been for the past hour, her dark eyes locked onto the clinic door, her towering form a silent guardian, waiting for a sign. She had done the impossible. She had fought to free her baby. She had placed her faith in humans. And now it was time to give him back. Emma took a deep breath and stepped outside, her boots pressing into the damp earth. The air was thick with anticipation. the forest holding its breath along with her. Luna's ears twitched. She took one step forward, and then she stopped. Emma knelt down and gently placed Aspen onto the ground. For a moment the cub hesitated, then, recognizing his mother, he let out a soft, trembling whimper. That was all it took. Luna rushed forward, her heavy paws barely making a sound against the dirt. But she didn't snatch Aspen up. She moved carefully, lowering her massive head to inspect him. Emma watched as Luna gently nudged Aspen's side with her nose, sniffing his bandages, her breath warm against his fur. It was a mother's inspection, a silent reassurance. Her cub was alive. Aspen let out a small, tired huff and pressed himself against her leg. Luna curled protectively around him, as if shielding him from the world. Emma felt the sting of tears but blinked them back. It wasn't sadness. It was awe. And then something happened that she would never forget. Luna lifted her head and looked directly at Emma. Not with fear, not with anger, but with recognition. The moment stretched, the world fading into the background. In that single look, Emma understood. Thank you. It wasn't a spoken language. It didn't need to be. A moment later, Luna turned, guiding Aspen back toward the forest. She moved slowly, matching his weakened steps, but as they reached the tree line, she paused. She looked back one last time, and then they were gone. Emma let out a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. She had spent years caring for animals, but today something had changed. She hadn't just saved a cub, she had earned the trust of a mother bear. And that trust was something she would cherish forever. In the quiet wilderness of Silver Creek, a mother bear did something that defied instinct. She placed her trust in humans. Despite knowing that people had caused her cub suffering, she still believed in the possibility of kindness. And in that act of trust, she taught us something profound. Love transcends fear. As we grow older, we may find ourselves guarded, hesitant to trust after experiencing loss or hardship. But just like Luna, we must remember that not everyone intends harm. Sometimes opening our hearts, even when it's difficult, allows healing to take place. Persistence matters. Luna fought tirelessly for her cub, refusing to give up. As we navigate our own challenges, be it health struggles, loneliness, or the ever-changing world around us, we must keep fighting for what truly matters. And finally, kindness leaves a lasting impact. The care Emma and Michael showed wasn't just about treating a wounded cub. It was about honoring the unspoken bond between humans and nature. Small acts of kindness, even to those who cannot thank us with words, can change a life. In the end, trust, perseverance, and compassion are what truly connect us all, whether human or animal. Some stories remind us that love, trust, and perseverance are not just human qualities. They exist in the wild, in the unspoken bonds between mother and child, and in the quiet moments where fear gives way to hope. If this story touched your heart, leave a like and subscribe to the channel to continue sharing powerful tales of friendship, loyalty, and resilience.